Now, I wanted to also bring a couple other people up here to say at least a hello before we go. As we talk about this, I want to address the importance of what Andrea did. By the way, I think we have someone from Hawaii. I heard there might be an Assistant Secretary of Energy or past Assistant Secretary of Energy wanted to say hi. I don't know if they're all still here. But notice what Andrea did by working systematically, persistently at all the right times, step by step by step, so it wasn't derailed, okay? And we need to do that across many of the states in the same way. And what happened at NCSL was not really a loss, because we had to actually continue to do that process step by step in the same way in many other places. And I think we have an opportunity this coming year to do that. Also, not only in legislators, but with the users, right? Users are stakeholders too, consumers and organizations like hospitals. Imagine what would happen if we got a movement of hospitals who said, we want to make certain hospitals can stay open indefinitely during a long-term power outage. Wouldn't that be huge? And let's say if we did the same thing with firefighters, we brought all the emergency management folks and the firefighters to say, when there's a major emergency, we're going to keep the fire hall open. And by the way, we know you don't have any money, so our job is to find you the resources to do it. Hospitals don't have much money. It's our job to find you the resources to do it. If I could find you the resources to make your hospital more resilient, would you like that? If I could do that for your fire hall, would you like that? You know, if I could do that for your 911 center, would you like that, or would you turn down the money and say, I'm too busy to talk to you right now, I don't want your money, I don't want to be able to make some of my own power or store it? You know, that wouldn't make sense, right? But we need to be able to engage them in a very positive way, saying we love you, want to help, without saying, I don't know that much about you, I don't really like you all that much, I'm just going to give you an unfunded mandate. You know, and you got to go suffer through this pain all by yourself. Now, unfortunately, terrorists give us a lot of unfunded mandates, as does Mother Nature. I think if we work together selectively, we can actually bring the resources to the table in a way that energizes and motivates all these people to help us. Now, I see someone come on up here, an InfraGard member. I want you to tell us your name and what you know about InfraGard and where you came from.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm Arnold Kishi. I'm the president of the InfraGard INMA in Hawaii. But when I look at my career, my second home is actually the National Capital Region. When you count all the years and days I've spent up here on the Hill working with the federal agencies, this is my second home. So I understand a lot of the issues that you folks have been talking about in Virginia and Maryland very well. Chuck had asked me to just to say a few words as to why I am interested in all of this. And coming from a pretty isolated part of the country, and just some statistics, Hawaii is the 40th largest state. So the 10 states that have less than 1.5 million people. And when you add all the landmass together, Hawaii is the 43rd largest state. So there's 7 states that have less land than all the islands in Hawaii combined. But what capsulizes the issues that Hawaii faces is the geographers say it's the most isolated, populated area in the world, because there's 2,500 miles to the next place that can provide assistance if Hawaii ever needs that. So it's, as a state and a community, developed a sense of being very self-reliant and not take critical infrastructure for granted. And just as a personal note, when I was growing up, we had no electricity, no utilities, no water was all catchment, and no sewer system. And telephone, when it finally came, was party line, and only worked certain hours a day. And same with electricity. And in some places, that's still how it is.
Or how I grew up,
right.
Part of the time.
Right. So I can appreciate a lot of the things that we do to keep the infrastructure running, but I always remember what it was like back when I was growing up. And as I said, some places are still that way.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Hawaii? That's great. Now, I wanted to tell you how important Hawaii is. Now, you heard how significant and important Maine was. Let me tell you how important Hawaii is from my point of view. In the event of one of these nationwide disasters, we are all Hawaii. We're all, how many miles? 2,500 miles away from the next person who could help you? That might be us, right? So we need to be able to figure out how we can learn from Hawaii and be more like Hawaii in a lot of ways, and what we can do to be more like Maine. and welcome all of your participation. Other questions we've got. I know you've got, we have about 2 more minutes without going overtime. I see a question, I see 2 questions. Let me take the one in the back and work my way forward. And identify yourself, please. And stand with that
Sure. I'm Sandra Kresbach, and I'm actually here because I'm associated with technical education, but I'm one of these people that has another hat in the closet. I'm the mayor of a suburb of St. Paul and Minneapolis, and we have a transformer station. So this has become very interesting, and I just have a question in terms of how you manage discussion about this without residents who live near a transformer station becoming very concerned about their safety should there be an explosion.
Okay, I guess it depends on how close you live to the power station, and but there's a similar question: is how do you handle it when it goes bye-bye and they're not getting the power? Who would like to take that? We have our Minneapolis people, I think, had to catch a plane, so your neighbors had to go back. The Duluth fella got snowed in, 30 inches of snow, by the way, and I hear we're getting some freezing rain tomorrow. Anyone want to answer that? Do I hear an eager? I got a couple. Okay, so Bron and we'll do it in succession. Bron first, and then Representative Bolin after.
This is Bron Cikotas. When we have seen those transformers fail, they usually do not fail in such a way where there's an explosion. So from that standpoint, you're basically not in danger. But I have seen explosions of power substations, which are significant on video. But again, typically those things are not close to houses. And
do you ever hear that some of them are close to nuclear power plants?
Yes, but the nuclear power plants are quite well protected from outside blasts. So I don't think that you have to worry about that. There are other things to worry about, but not that.
Thank you. So it's a great problem to engage, and we don't have to be too fearful of that part. But Andrea.
I just wanted to say that those people are probably your greatest allies because, you know, if they would engage, it's not just bad news. There's good news too, and they just you want to bring the good things into place.
Very good. I saw another hand here, and again, identify yourself again.
Dr. Martin Dudziak, Tetradyne, and Ecoadina in Virginia. You mentioned about building alliances and with different organizations. I have a thought, I'm just going to toss it out. Large-scale hospital corporations, HCA, Hospital Corporation of America, I know it quite well. Centera Corporation, Bron Cikotas, that's 3 right there. If we can craft a way to approach these organizations, particularly HCA, because I think we've got an ally. And I'm just tossing this out. I'm not speaking for retired former Senator Bill Frist, MD, but his family created HCA. When they went out public the last time, a year and a half ago, it was the largest IPO in history, $33 billion. I think that we should get concrete and focus on the healthcare issues, because one of the biggest losses of life after a large-scale EMP will be as a consequence of food spoilage and contamination and other consequences related with food and water. If we can address getting an ally of such a corporation like HCA and others, then we will have power, economic and political, I believe. Thank you.
Very good. Now, when I hear you announce yourself as a doctor, is that a medical doctor or an academic doctorate?
If anybody knows me, I'm too theoretical to work on anything clinical. I'm a theoretical physicist, and my PhD was partly on EMP.
Well, thank you very much. How appropriate. So my immediate reaction, I don't know if you've been here all day long, but one of the things we have done in recent days is we've begun to recruit top leaders in the country in various infrastructure areas. We have 2 co-chairs who are here today from the healthcare industry. One was Dr. Terbush, who leads medical thinking nationwide at Northcom, and the other is Dr. Terry Dunnett, who is a thoracic surgeon from Chicago and is active in the InfraGard section there. Both of them have joined our EMP SIG and are co-chairing that. So we are absolutely interested in that, and I would like to recruit your involvement personally to bring Senator Frist and the CEOs of those organizations to the table. And we will bring the world's best experts in all these related areas to calmly and systematically provide them with the information they need so they could determine how they could be effectively and, if nothing else, entertainingly involved in what we need to do to protect their own self-interest. So very much like to do that. And so what I'd like to do, because I have so many things in my head, is throw the ball back to you and now say, you now have hunting rights. You've been given a hunting license to hunt me down and the others that you've met. And if you can't find the others, find me. I'm very findable. I may be exhausted and tired and a little loopy, but you're very welcome to hunt me down and do that. I want to mention food. Sometimes people get tired of me here saying this, but Congressman Bartlett has not only agreed to be on our policy committee and our energy committee and our civilian military committee, he's very interested in working with us on a strategic proposal. That's a policy proposal that I'll just mention briefly because you mentioned food. During the Cold War, we had the Strategic Grain Reserve. At any point in time, we could feed 50 million starving people anywhere in the world. It was basically to protect ourselves, right? And who did we normally feed? Who starved before us? Millions of Chinese, millions of Russians. And we used our grain to keep those people alive. Isn't that wonderful? But guess what? We don't have it anymore. So if 50 million Chinese or Russians today came to us and asked for aid, we couldn't feed them. What's worse, what happens if 50 million Americans are starving? We can print all the money we want, but if there's no food, we can't feed ourselves. One of the reasons why we don't have that is that it was a centralized system obtainable by the feds. And so whenever we had a bad crop year and the poor farmers were saying, well, the prices are going up, maybe I can make something out of this and not go bankrupt. To be a political hero, someone in the federal government said, prices are going up. Wow, bad, inflation, bad. I know, I have a tool to do something about it. I'm going to dump this grain on the market and suppress food prices. And it did that, except for the fact that a whole bunch of farmers went out of business, and the grain industry is tottering. And so they basically begged the federal government in public documents you can see is, please don't give us any more money. Please dismantle this system. And another hero federally said, you're right. We have too big of a deficit. We don't want to spend money if we don't have to. We will just discontinue that program. So we no longer have it. So I've been proposing, along with Congressman Bartlett and others, to tweak that a little bit. And instead of having a centralized system that could be commandeered for political purposes and disrupt the market, what we instead do is have a distributed system that not only has grain but any other kind of nutritional food, and we call it the Strategic Food Reserve. And we figure out a way to make it possible for us to feed all of America for virtually no extra money and without a nickel from the government in such a way that we can feed ourselves in case of an emergency. And we've started thinking through as economists and people in that industry that there could be a very cost-effective way to do that using basic market methods that could basically cost us almost no money. And we can talk about that later, but that's an example. And as we begin to work on the food issue or the healthcare issue, we're all going to start off with a bunch of great ideas that 6 months later they're going to look half-baked, right? But if you're an entrepreneur or an inventor, you realize that almost every decent idea that made somebody a fortune or did something wonderful started out as a half-baked idea. But when you sit in the room and you listen to your fellow technical people and your marketing people and your manufacturing people and your customers, and you get the heat of criticism from your peers fast enough to do you some good, that heat of that constructive criticism takes your half-baked loaf of bread and makes it a fully baked loaf. And that's why we need each of you. So you are now drafted by me, and if you don't show up, you're AWOL, and I'll send the Army guys after you, okay? Anybody else who dares to have a question? Do I see another hand somewhere? Oh, Mary, hold on one second. Mary's one of the people who is one of our, I'm going to tell you 3 support people we have to help you in this. One is Mary, because she is helping support all these liaison panels that we have. A second person is, I don't know if she's still here, but Lauren Schuler from the FBI is our full-time FBI agent in headquarters of FBI to support our efforts. And then we have a third, we have a national InfraGard board member who is going to help outreach to all the InfraGard organizations, including Hawaii. And his name is Bob Janisitis, to make certain that folks like him are brought to the table as we need to have that happen. And Mary?
We still have out at the front desk the sign-up sheets for being part of these working groups. So if you are motivated from what you've heard today and will come and help us, that would be wonderful if you sign up, and then the leader of those various areas are going to contact you.
Okay, now, another thing I want to mention, if you believe in resiliency, that means you always have a plan B, right? Okay, so our InfraGard website is being redeveloped right now for us, and it's not as fully functional yet as we might like that. I know that never happens with a federal IT project. However, that's even when times are going well and we got everything under control. But you never know. So one of the things we're offering is our emails. On the back of that book I showed you that you get to take with you today, the story of what we're doing is all on the back flap. Our mission, our goals, and a way to hunt me down on the back flap of that, okay? Secondly, we will try to do something with things like Eventbrite. We have a communications team, and our communications technology people are going to explore ways to facilitate interaction nationwide on a regular enough basis so you can feel empowered to do something. We have people who are joining us who are experts at social media. We have, for example, people here today who are developing technology that will make it possible for any of us who are not computer savvy to download a little piece of software on our computer that would allow us to make our own mobile app on the fly without knowing how to do any programming whatsoever, just by dragging and dropping things. We have a mobile app today supporting this. If you go to Eventbrite and download the Eventbrite application, it's a free app, and all you have to do is search on their search bar when it comes up on your phone or iPad. You put the letters EMP, and guess what? This meeting pops up with all of the other links and everything else. And we will create an EMP SIG, an InfraGard National EMP SIG app as well, so that we can continue to find ways to talk with each other. So we want to make it possible to do one-on-one communications like this within groups. We want to be able to make it possible for those of you in your groups locally, wherever you are in the country, or with the people in your subject matter areas, can work amongst yourselves. You don't have to wait for this conference to happen, and you don't need to wait for me, for sure, or anyone else in the group. But we're trying to facilitate that communications. Anything else before we go? Because we're at time to close. We are, oh, perfect, time. I hear a voice. Yes, Dana, hold on. Come on up. Let me give you this. And this will be the last comment or question. What's that? Yeah, okay.
So Chuck was just mentioning about the drag and drop interface, and I am actually one of the partners in the company that has created this framework. And one of the things that I would like to do is find people who are interested in creating something useful and productive, constructive, that would actually be relevant to this particular SIG, to the kinds of requirements that may emerge, both for preparation and for response purposes. So if you are interested, please contact me.
Great. Now, we have, and Bron is going to say a word too, because what we were going to have earlier, and Peter probably left, so I sort of forgot about it. Before I leave, I wanted Bron to be able to make sort of a closing remark or two to sort of pull everything together, because you never know when we may have missed something, and Dr. Pry was going to do that for me. And on the fly, Plan B, he agreed to do it. And so this is Bron's opportunity to make certain to give us a closing overview or remark or whatever.
Thank you. This is a big problem. We all realize it. But the basic thing is we do not need to harden all our infrastructures. In my opinion, if we hardened 30% of our grid, we could save a majority of our people. And to do that, you basically need to prioritize. We need to harden the nuclear plants. We need to harden the hydro plants. They do not need fuel supplies for a long time. So that type of prioritization needs to be across the board. We need to harden certain infrastructures like water, like sewage processing, plus others that are critical, like transportation and things like that. They're critical to both maintaining life at a level that people can survive, and at the same time to initiate the recovery process. So if you look at the whole problem, you say there's too much to do, but there are ways of addressing it that from the start, you should start saving lives right from the beginning. You don't wait to get the plan finished and then start and get it so much time. It's going to take time to do it. But we can start, and we can start saving lives right from the beginning. And that is the key. I'd like to leave you with one more thing. This is probably new to most of you. I've probably done more EMP testing than anybody else. I've been working in this field since 1963. In my experience, I think I'm the only one that's run a test like this. I set up a room, half the size of this hall, set up military operators to operate equipment, and as we were testing it. And we were exposing those people to 50,000 volts per meter with the equipment operating. Now, I had been exposed to those levels many times before, so I didn't mind putting people in that condition. We make sure nobody had a pacemaker or anything like that. But basically, as we were pulsing them at 50,000 volts per meter, we had the operators operate keyboards. They were getting shocked at the keyboards. We had the test conductor wearing one of those headset radios. He got zapped from the ceiling. And that was a very unpleasant experience, but there was no serious injury in that case. The reason I'm bringing this out to you, as we were pulsing, every outlet in that place was sparking. There were arcs in every outlet. There are arcs in other locations within that particular test setup. What that means is that in your home, if you get exposed to high altitude EMP, you're going to have sparks occurring across the home. In our EMP testing, we started a fire at an AT&T facility. Now, it's not easy to start a fire in an AT&T facility, but we did. Basically, we have to be prepared to deal with those arcs. As I go around talking around the country on these issues on hardening, I still work in that area. I basically recommend to people that what they do for their own protection is get these power strips, high-value equipment power strips, and either plug them in throughout their house, or else there are units that are available where you can take a regular outlet, replace it, and it will provide the protection. The idea is not to get a fire started in your house. You put 3 or 4 or 5 of those in your house. Basically, you should not have any unintended sparking locations, arc over locations. The problem is, if you live close to your neighbors, you want them to do it also. Because if their house catches on fire, you might just get yours burned down too. So it's an issue that people generally haven't talked about. You rarely hear it. I think I'm the only one talking about it. It's one that is serious. It could start serious fires in the cities, particularly when there is no traffic lights. Eventually you're running out of water. And it's a situation that we need to carefully look. The nice thing is, if we could get the National Electrical Code to put those things throughout houses in the cities or in the countryside, we could avoid this problem.
Thank you very much, and I've been told that we're running out of contract time. We may be running up to union laws. I don't know. Thank you all for coming. We also are organizing a grid, an organization looking at all the standards bodies. But thanks again. Give yourself a round of applause as you go say goodbye.
You know, Chuck has done such an amazing job here. I don't know what zapped him to have all his cells sparking like that, but let's have a round of applause for Chuck.
I'm embarrassed, but